Welcome in, everybody. A little bit of a bonus evening edition of the Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. And I would be remiss if we did not do at least 10 to 15 minutes here on just an absolute classic. Notre Dame playing for a national championship. Final score 27-24. A Mitch Jeter, not quite walk-off field goal seals the deal. Wild game. Notre Dame trailed at the half. Notre Dame trailed late. They come back to win. This one was just unbelievable. So everybody come on in. We appreciate everybody joining us here on whatever it is, a Thursday night. We don't normally do this. By the way, if you are listening on podcast, we did a full episode of the Aaron Torres pod on Thursday afternoon. A lot of college hoops. We talked Calipari. We talked UConn. We talked a few other things. We will put this at the front end of that, so you will get a full episode of the pod with this on the intro. But let's go ahead and dive in. So again, obviously we'll talk about 15 minutes of college football. Then we will throw to the college basketball portion of the show. But my, oh my. What else can I say other than final score 27-24, Notre Dame wins? And listen, I'll be honest, is that we are recording here right after the game between Notre Dame and Penn State. I don't know that I have like amazing takeaways and amazing takes, and I haven't spent a lot of time prepping notes. There's nothing else to say other than that this was an instant classic, right? Notre Dame falls down 10-3 early in the game. Penn State really kind of largely dominated the first half of that game. Notre Dame was lucky to only be down 10-3. I'll be honest, transparently, I kind of felt like Notre Dame was maybe a little bit tired, a little bit beat up. They obviously played just a week ago on Thursday. Penn State had 2 extra days of rest. And I think as I look back at that first half, I just thought, man, do they have enough juice in the tank after playing just a few weeks ago? Or just a few days ago? Penn State gets the extra 48 hours, and it just felt like Notre Dame was a step slow. Abdul Carter was playing like quite literally the number 1 overall pick in the draft in the first half, and you just kind of felt like, okay, I don't know that like this is going to be a runaway, but at the same time, is this going to be, Penn State 24, Notre Dame 10, and it's not really competitive? Well, Notre Dame comes out to start the second half. They run the ball right at Notre Dame. Right at Penn State. They get a touchdown early in the second half on the opening drive. They tie it up at 10-10, and it was just back and forth from there. Listen, you don't need me to tell you, but obviously after Notre Dame scores to open the second half, they take a 17-10 lead. Penn State comes back. Then after that, it's 17-17. Penn State takes the lead. Notre Dame ties it up. There's all sorts of chaos. We have obviously the pass interference call that sets up the Penn State touchdown. Listen, I thought it was probably the right call. I thought it was probably the right call in the red zone. Didn't love it. Thought we could have been perfectly fine without making that call, but the call goes down, the call stands, and you kind of just sit there and say, I don't know if that was the perfect call. Penn State ends up scoring, and then Notre Dame comes right down and scores again. Obviously, the big play late, listen, I'm not here to criticize other people in the media. Greg McElroy, I think, is really good at what he does, but Penn State gets that ball back with what? Let's take a quick look here. Penn State gets the ball back with 38 seconds left. And, Sean McDonough kind of asked him point blank, hey, Greg, what would you do? And he says, Drew Aller, I trust him. He doesn't make big mistakes at big spots. I think he's good to go. Yeah. And then we saw what happened. Drew Aller immediately throws a pick. It sets up the Mitch Jeter touchdown or the Mitch Jeter field goal. And Notre Dame does win 27-24. Couple thoughts here. Listen, I think it's easy in hindsight, revisionist history, to sit there and say, Penn State, they got too aggressive late. I think 2 things can be true. And I tweeted this out, is that I have been somebody that has very much advocated for, Drew Aller, he should declare whether he's ready or not. He's going to be a top 10 pick. Well, I bring it up because I think 2 things are true in this case. I think Drew Aller has all the size and all of the tools to be a top 10 pick. I still think he would be a top 10 pick if he declares for the draft. I don't think that he will, But you look at who needs quarterbacks in this draft. Number 1 overall, the Titans. Number 2 overall, the Browns, maybe potentially taking a quarterback. Number 3, the Giants. The Jets may need a quarterback. The Raiders are going to need a quarterback. So Drew Aller would get drafted. But I also think that this game kind of showed, like, yeah, that guy has a lot of work to do. I thought he missed a couple really easy throws early in the game. Late in the game, the pass interference call, I know I just said that it was probably the right call, but he completely underthrew the receiver. Dude, you're 6'5", 230. You got a cannon for an arm. You can't throw the ball 3 yards short, 5 yards short, and get bailed out by a pass interference. And then on the final play, I think it just shows this kid is very far from really, in my opinion, being NFL ready. Listen, this is the NIL world. If this was 2007 or 2011 or 1994, like, yes, I would say go pro, get your money, whatever. But he's going to make great money coming back to Penn State. He is going to make great money as a college quarterback, and he's just not ready to be a pro. And so I do think he comes back. I hope he comes back. Big picture with Penn State, I think it'll be kind of interesting. You would assume Abdul Carter's going pro. Tyler Warren is obviously going to go pro. But after that, you're kind of curious. You've started to hear buzz. Are some of those running backs coming back? Drew Aller is coming back. And so with Penn State, I think they will be okay, big picture. We will get back to them in a minute. But I just have to spend half a second talking about Marcus Freeman here, because Marcus Freeman, my goodness, we got to give credit to Notre Dame here, because, again, the thing with Notre Dame is this. Is like, I think there are some people that are like, love Notre Dame, hate Notre Dame, whatever it might be. But at the same time, like, the thing that stands out to me about this team, you cannot question their toughness. You cannot question their resiliency. You cannot question their want to and their will and their know-how, no doubt. Because look at this team. First of all, just the fact that every single week they've been fighting back from that Northern Illinois loss in week 2. By the way, there's a bigger picture conversation about the college football playoff we'll get to in a second. But, they've been battling since week 2 of the season when they lost to Notre Dame. They keep fighting. They keep getting better. But you look at today's game. Again, they had 2 less days rest than Penn State. And I understand this time of year, everybody's beat up. Everybody's tired. Abdul Carter's hurt on the Penn State side. But I look at Notre Dame. The resiliency to play last Thursday. They obviously traveled on Tuesday down to Miami and are ready to play in this game. They fall behind, and I don't want to say they don't give up. I mean, nobody's going to give up in a college football national semifinal appearance, but you're down 10-3. You're kind of getting beat up along the line of scrimmage. And I just sit there and say, like, I give them so much credit for fighting back, for the resiliency, for the toughness. And I just think they're just a really cool story, right? And I think that's been a big picture conversation about Notre Dame throughout the last week or so, is like, man, Marcus Freeman makes it really hard to root against Notre Dame. And I do think there's something to it. Think about tonight, okay? So I just mentioned the difference in, the amount of time that, that they had off compared to Penn State. But also think about this. They lost Riley Mills, their best defensive lineman, before the Georgia game. Find a way to win. This game, lose their starting left tackle. He's hurt. He's bagged up. He's not playing. Abdul Carter is killing them. Their starting left guard was out for most of this game. Also worth noting, Riley Leonard goes to concussion protocol. We think he has a concussion. First of all, the backup comes in. Angeles leads him on a scoring drive. Then Riley Leonard comes back in. He's not afraid. He's willing to put his head down. He's willing to make plays. Like, how can you not respect and appreciate this team? Like, all this stuff about, Notre Dame's this, Notre Dame's that. The one thing you can't call Notre Dame is soft, man, because this Notre Dame team, in my opinion, they are a tough group. And I think there is a lot to like if you're a college football fan. So a couple quick thoughts here as we move forward. One, first of all, I'm going to say something really quick before we kind of look ahead to what's next. But I'll say this. Is I need to take an L on something really quick, okay? So I need to take an L on something because I was somebody that was not in favor of college football playoff expansion, okay? And I just kind of felt like most years there's 1 to 2, maybe in some extreme years there's like 3 great teams that are worthy of being in the college football play and really worthy of there are really like 2 to 3 teams in most seasons that are actually truly great, capable of winning a national championship. Okay. But I think what has also happened is not only has there been expansion, but the sport has changed. And in my opinion, what kind of matters here is that the top isn't as good as it's been. Look at Georgia, look at Texas. I mean, Ohio State lost to an unranked Michigan team. But you get to spot 5, 6, 7, 8. I still think there's a gap between team like 1 and team 11. I don't know that there's a huge gap between team 1 and team 6, though. Team 2 and team 7, team 2 and team 5, team 1 and team 5. And so I was never a proponent of expanding the playoff. And now as I look back, I think this is the best system that we've had. Now, I do think it has impacted the regular season in a little bit of a negative way. I think Penn State's a perfect example. You know, you wanted to overreact after they lost to Ohio State earlier in the season, and you said, you know what, as long as they get in the playoff, we'll see what happens from there. So I think it's impacted the regular season a little bit, especially September and October, because you can lose now 2, and if you ask SEC fans, 3 games, and you should still be in the mix for a college football playoff spot. So I do think it's impacted the regular season a little bit. But I'll tell you this, man, this postseason, I know the early round games were not great. This postseason is better than what we've had. Because if you look at how this college football playoff would have played out, just think about it in a 4-team era. Ohio State, who we'll get to in a minute, would not have been in. They would have lost twice. They would not have been in the Big Ten championship game. I think either Penn State or Notre Dame doesn't get in, right? You feel pretty good about, Georgia gets in, or Oregon gets in, and then you just kind of, I don't know who's in beyond that, but does a 2-loss Penn State team that lost to Ohio State and Oregon get in? Does a 1-loss Notre Dame team that lost to Northern Illinois? Can you imagine the conversation if, say, a Texas and SEC runner-up got in over a Notre Dame team that lost to Northern Illinois? So I just bring it up because these teams would not have been in a 4-team college football playoff, and now we have this 12-teamer, and I just think it's been good for the health of the sport because, you know, the old cliche, but it's true. This thing is now getting settled on the field. It's not hypothetical. It's not, well, I mean, if Penn State had been in, could you imagine what would have happened? What about Notre Dame? I mean, Ohio State's sitting at home and they won this bowl game, and they would have been, if they had only gotten in the, well, now we can figure it out, and now we can decide it on the field. Notre Dame is a team that I don't think anybody really thought realistically would be in this position probably even 5 weeks ago. Forget the national championship game. Forget when the bracket came out. I don't think even after the bracket came out, they beat Indiana. The conversation was about Indiana. It wasn't about Notre Dame. But they got to play the SEC champ. In SEC country, they beat them. They got to beat a Penn State team that had gotten hot in this college football playoff. And now they are playing for a national championship. Listen, I think there's a lot of other big picture stuff. You know, Penn State, what went wrong? What do they do next? The good news for them is I do believe Drew Aller will be back. We can discuss all that on Sunday's show. I just want to go ahead and give a quick reaction to this game. I think my big picture takeaway, the resilience in Notre Dame. Said it 2-3 times now, but to have 2 less days rest than Penn State, to not be able, to get that extra day. You know, they're traveling. They probably landed in South Bend sometime probably last Thursday, January 2nd, probably about 11 midnight Eastern. They get back, probably had to go to class. They, prep all week, fly out on Tuesday. Did not look great early, but they had a lot of resilience. Jeremiah Love was banged up. Riley Leonard was in concussion protocol. And as I said, 2 of those O-linemen were banged up. So we'll have plenty more on this on Sunday night's Aaron Torres pod. Obviously, by then we will know who Penn State is or who Notre Dame is playing. By the way, my first best bet, I did have Notre Dame -1.5. The next game, I do have Ohio State winning 24-10. My actual best bet is the under, so we'll see what happens there. But we're either getting Notre Dame, Texas, or Notre Dame, Ohio State. It's going to be awesome. We'll see if we do a live reaction tomorrow night. That remains to be seen. But I appreciate everybody's support. Hope everybody had a great, great, great night and enjoyed just an instant classic. By the way, if you are listening on YouTube, on podcast, it is now time to throw to a full Thursday show talking college hoops. We appreciate all of you. Maybe back Friday night to talk Ohio State, Texas. If not, definitely back Sunday. Speak.